Okay folks, buckle up. Tonight we're diving into one of the strangest stories to emerge from the final days of Nazi Germany. A missing woman, alleged alien transmissions, secret technology, and a mystery that may have been completely fabricated from the start. Get ready for a wild ride. Berlin, March 1945. The Reich is burning. Allied bombs have turned the city into rubble and smoke. Generals are fleeing. Officers are destroying evidence. The 1,000-year Reich is going to last 12 years and a mountain of ash. And in the middle of all of it, a woman named Maria Orsic sends one final message to her inner circle. Just 3 words, no destination, no explanation, and no date for her return. Then she's gone, vanished. No grave, no prisoner record, no post-war trace of any kind. The Nazis called her their most dangerous psychic. The conspiracy community says she built Hitler's first UFO. Historians say she never existed at all, so who was she and where did she go? Okay, already we have a problem because the main character may not have been a real person at all. A woman who historians say was possibly invented in the 1990s. But here's the thing, someone built this story, someone made it very, very detailed, and whoever did that put a serious amount of effort in. So the question I'm really asking is, what were they covering up by building it? Maria Orsic, Zagreb, 1895. A girl is born who will one day claim to receive transmissions from a star system 65 light-years away. Munich, 1919. The First World War has just ended. Europe is in pieces. Germany is humiliated, hungry, and furious. The city of Munich has become the most dangerous cocktail in modern history. Crushed national pride, violent street politics, a collapsing economy, and an occult underground that runs through all of it like a live wire. Into this world steps a woman who will become the most mythologized figure in the entire Nazi occult tradition. Maria Orsic, Croatian-born, German-raised, reportedly striking in appearance. No confirmed birth record that historians can verify. No census entry. No contemporary newspaper mention. She exists almost entirely through accounts written decades after the events she supposedly caused. The primary sources are 2 Austrian researchers writing in the 1990s, Ralph Ettel and Jan van Helsing, a pen name for Rudolf Borg. They claim access to private documents. Those documents have never been independently verified. This is the first thing to hold on to in your mind as this story unfolds. What follows is either documented history or an extremely elaborate fiction. Right now, we genuinely don't know which one. What we do know is what the mythology says. Now, Orsic presented herself as a gifted clairvoyant medium with one specific ability, automatic writing. Her hand moving without conscious control, producing characters and scripts she could not identify or explain. But it is the physical detail people remember first, her hair. She never cut it. None of her inner circle ever did. They grew it to the floor, and the belief was not symbolic. The belief was functional. The hair acted as a biological psychic antenna, a living receiver tuned to frequencies ordinary human senses could not detect. This was not fringe even for its era. Theosophist and occultist literature of the 1920s genuinely debated whether the human body contained untapped sensory organs. Orsic's group simply took that idea further than anyone else ever had. She called them the Vril Damen, the ladies of the Vril. A dedicated sisterhood of female mediums who rejected modern fashion entirely. No short hair, no contemporary dress, operating as a self-contained world on the fringes of Weimar society. Our members mentioned in the mythology include Sigrun, Traut, Gudrun, and Heike. All code names, all untraceable. I picture a circle of women with hair trailing across stone floors, sitting in total silence, waiting for something to come through. That is where this story really begins. The code names. I keep coming back to the code names, Sigrun, Traut, Gudrun. These are not mysterious, unknowable ancient designations. These are just German names from the 1920s. Sigrun is basically the Weimar-era equivalent of calling yourself Sharon, which is somehow both deeply reassuring and deeply unsettling in equal measure. Also the hair. I spent a lot of time with paranormal research, and I cannot find a single tradition anywhere on Earth where the solution to receiving alien transmissions is simply don't get a haircut. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying I would love to read that peer-reviewed paper. Vril and the Coming Race. To understand the Vril Society, you have to go back 24 years before Maria Orsic was even born. 1871, London. A British novelist named Edward Bulwer Lytton publishes a book, anonymous at first. The title is The Coming Race. Now, Bulwer Lytton was not a fringe writer. He was a baron, a member of parliament, one of the most successful authors in Victorian England. He coined "the pen is mightier than the sword." Now, he wrote the opening line, "It was dark and stormy night." He was culturally respected, firmly establishment. And in 1871, he described an underground civilization called the Vril Damen, a superior race who had mastered an all-permeating cosmic energy they called Vril. And this force could heal, destroy, levitate, and transmit thought across any distance. The Vril Damen had evolved beyond ordinary humanity entirely. Bulwer Lytton wrote it as fiction. Here is the problem. Some of the most serious occultists of the 19th century did not read it that way. Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy and arguably the most influential occultist of the modern era, explicitly discussed Vril as a real force in her 1877 work, Isis Unveiled. Now, she believed Bulwer Lytton had not invented the concept. She believed he had channeled it, that the novel was a vessel for genuine hidden knowledge, disguised as fiction to survive. Now, this created a feedback loop that would run for 50 years. A novel becomes a sacred text. Sacred text gives the occult community of the early 20th century a name and a framework for something they already believed was cosmically real. By the time Orsic emerges in Munich in 1919, the word Vril carries 5 decades of mystical weight. There's one more thread worth pulling here. Nikola Tesla, working through the same period, was pursuing what he called radiant energy, an ambient cosmic force, wireless power drawn from the fabric of space itself. He believed the universe was filled with a sourceless field of energy that any sufficiently advanced technology could tap into. The conspiracy community has long noted this parallel. 2 researchers in different countries in the same era, pursuing the same thing but from opposite directions. One through physics, one through psychic transmission. Whatever their methods, they were asking the same question. So, just to recap the chain here, a Victorian politician writes a science fiction novel. A Russian psychic says it's actually a documentary. 50 years later, a group of women in Munich use it as a founding text for a secret society that will get tangled up with the SS. Now, that is an astonishing sequence of events that I couldn't have predicted if you'd given me a decade to try. Also, the fact that Bulwer Lytton wrote "It was a dark and stormy night," the most mocked opening line in English literature, means that the man who accidentally inspired Nazi occultism is also the man that every creative writing teacher cites as the example of what not to do. Now that is some legacy. Voices from Aldebaran. Beginning around 1919, Orsic claimed something was trying to reach her. Not vague spiritual impressions, not symbolic visions, something specific, something that arrived in writing. Now, during deep trance states, at the Vril Damen's private seances, her hand would begin to move without her willing it, automatic writing. Pages of symbols she could not identify, had never studied, could not consciously produce. And when she brought the scripts discreetly to academics, the response was cautious and strange. Structural similarities known to ancient writing systems, yes, but nothing that matched precisely. 2 distinct scripts appeared, one resembling a variant of medieval Templar cipher, the other structurally similar to ancient Sumerian. Both, once partially decoded, pointed to the same source, Aldebaran, a real star, a giant red star approximately 65 light-years from Earth in the constellation of Taurus. Its Arabic name, Aldebaran, means the follower. It was one of the 4 royal stars of ancient Persian astrology, significant across multiple cultures for thousands of years. In the Vril cosmology, Aldebaran was home to an ancient Aryan civilization called the Sumi, beings who had seeded human life on Earth millennia ago and were the true origin of the Aryan peoples, and they had been trying to make contact again. Now, when the messages were decoded further, they contained 2 things: astronomical data describing 2 inhabited planets in the Aldebaran system and technical specifications. Not spiritual guidance, engineering diagrams, a propulsion system, schematics for a circular craft capable of anti-gravity flight. The cosmological framework embedded in these transmissions was not neutral. The beings of Aldebaran, according to the messages, were the source of Sumerian civilization, Egyptian architecture, and the Aryan peoples of Central Asia. The ancient myths were not myths, they were historical records. You can see exactly where that leads. The cosmic origin story handed Nazi ideologists a supernatural justification for their racial theories. Aryan supremacy wasn't invented in a Munich beer hall. According to the transmissions, it was written into the structure of the universe itself. The channeling had just become very useful to some very dangerous people. I want to gently flag something about the choice of Aldebaran, because it's genuinely quite smart. It's not a random star. It's been symbolically significant across Persian, Babylonian and Arabic astronomy for thousands of years. Whoever constructed this mythology, if it was constructed, did their research properly. Second point, and I'm saying this with care, if your alien contact transmissions happen to precisely confirm the racial ideology of the political party currently funding your engineering project, it is worth asking whether those signals are arriving from 65 light years away or from the person in the room holding the checkbook. I believe Orsic believed what she received, but someone else was taking notes. Occult meets Reich, the Nazi connection. The Thule Society is not conspiracy theory, it is documented history, a real organisation active in Munich from 1918. Its core belief, an ancient Aryan master race from the mythical Arctic homeland of Thule, was the true origin of European civilization. Its political reach was concrete and dangerous. Thule Society members funded the early German Workers' Party, which became the NSDAP. Key members included Rudolf Hess, Alfred Rosenberg and Dietrich Eckart, Hitler's early mentor, and the man who reportedly said of him, "He will dance, but it is I who have called the tune." Now, the Vril Circle and the Thule Society were not the same organisation, but they overlapped significantly in membership, in location, and in ideology. The Vril group was the inner esoteric core. The Thule Society was the outward political arm. When the Reich consolidated power, the occult connections deepened into something institutionalised. Heinrich Himmler was not simply an administrator. He was a genuine occult obsessive, and this matters enormously. He founded the Ahnenerbe, a full SS research institute funded with Reich resources, dedicated to proving the occult and racial theories underpinning Nazi ideology. It sent expeditions to Tibet, Iceland, the Canary Islands, and Antarctica. It was looking for exactly what Orsic allegedly had, proof of Aryan cosmic origins. Himmler had his own astrologer. He rebuilt Wevelberg Castle as a quasi-pagan SS temple modelled on Arthurian mythology. He reportedly attended seances. All of this is documented, and here is a detail about Orsic that makes her compelling as a person rather than simply a symbol. Multiple accounts suggest she was ideologically opposed to Nazism. She was not a nationalist. She was not an anti-Semitic. She was a mystic pursuing what she believed was cosmic truth. And she allegedly despised the political direction the Reich was taking with the technology she had provided. The deal she appears to have calculated: she needed engineers, she needed industrial resources, she needed the infrastructure of a nation state to build what the blueprints described. Now, the Reich was the only entity in 1930s Germany that had all of those things, so she worked with them. The question this raises is the one that shadows the rest of the story. What happened when she realized she could no longer control what she had handed over to them? Himmler having a personal astrologer while simultaneously running the SS is a historical fact I find genuinely destabilizing. There is a man who oversaw some of the worst atrocities in human history who was also concurrently checking what Mercury was doing. I just don't know what to do with that information. But the Orsic angle, the idea that she specifically disliked the politics but needed the engineering capability, that dynamic rings true to me as a human thing. I'll work with people I disagree with to build the thing I care about. It's a deal that people make every single day. It's just not usually with the SS. The Otherworld Machine. Jensitzflugmaschine. Say it slowly. It translates as Otherworld Flight Machine. According to the mythology, this is what Orsic's channeled blueprints were building toward. A circular disc-shaped craft, approximately 60 meters in diameter. No wings, no conventional propellant, no combustion chamber. The propulsion principle, as described in the transmitted specifications, counter-rotating electromagnetic fields generating a Vril field effect that negated gravitational pull. Now, some accounts go further, specifying mercury vortex generators, rapidly spinning plasma, creating and sustaining the field. The mythology places the first prototype assembly between 1922 and 1924 at a Bavarian facility built by an engineering group called the DHVSS, the Men of the Black Stone. Now, this predates the Nazi Party gaining power by a full decade. Now, that detail matters. It means the technology, if it existed at all, was not a Nazi invention. It was something the Nazis eventually tried to acquire and weaponize. The mythology then describes a progression of prototypes. The Rune Flugstock, round aircraft, designated RFZ-1 through RFZ-7. The RFZ-2 allegedly flew in 1934. Later models near silent operation and extreme vertical maneuverability. Now, here is where documented history and fringe theory intersect in a way that resists easy dismissal. German engineers, including Rudolf Schriever, Richard Mette, and Helmut Habermohl, are documented in declassified records as having worked on experimental disc-shaped aircraft designs during the Second World War. Their projects are in the historical record. The question is whether these were conventional aeronautical experiments or something underpinned by blueprints with a stranger origin. The conspiracy layers Orsic's channel schematics onto these real engineers' real work. Now, that blend of verifiable fact and fringe mythology is precisely what makes the story so difficult to dismiss. At war's end, German experimental designs and their engineers faced three documented fates: captured by the Americans through Operation Paperclip, captured by the Soviets, or destroyed to prevent capture. The conspiracy adds a fourth: evacuated to a location that had been prepared for in advance for exactly this moment. We'll get to that shortly. The Men of the Black Stone. Well, somebody really workshopped that name, and nobody accidentally ends up calling their engineering group the Men of the Black Stone. That is a branding decision. That is a committee meeting. Also, mercury vortex generators. Now, if you look up what actually happens when you heat mercury plasma to operational temperatures, you'll find that it is extremely toxic and you'd die. So, either the propulsion system works so well that they never had to run it for very long, or there are some very unfortunate engineers buried in Bavaria. Neither of those possibilities is very comforting. Die Glocke and the Flying Saucer Genius. If you've been following my other channel, Chronicles of the Drift, then Die Glocke needs no introduction. Now, for those who haven't, the episode is linked below. So, the Nazi bell, a bell-shaped device approximately 9 feet tall and 5 feet wide, constructed from heavy-grade metal. Operated by counter-rotating cylinders containing a mysterious substance researchers refer to as Zerum-525. When active, everything biological within a significant radius broke down at the cellular level. The area around any active test was kept completely clear of living organisms. Now, here is a connection between the bell and the Jensic Flugmaschine. The counter-rotating field principle appears in both. The theory: Die Glocke was not a standalone device. It was the propulsion core, a functional proof of the field mechanics that were intended to power the disc aircraft. 2 parallel development tracks, one at a facility in Lower Silesia, one at a separate site, designed to eventually combine into a single operational system. The man connecting both programs was SS General Hans Kammler, the engineer who oversaw Die Glocke's construction. He vanished at the end of the war. The bell vanished with him. Both remain genuinely unaccounted for. Now, that is not fringe mythology. That is a documented historical gap that has never been closed. Now, June 24th, 1947, Private Pilot Kenneth Arnold is flying over Mount Rainier, Washington. He observes 9 disc-shaped objects moving in chain formation at extraordinary speed. He describes their motion as like a saucer skipping across water. A wire reporter coins the phrase flying saucer. Within weeks, it is global. Within a year, sightings are reported on every continent. The fringe origin story embedded in the Orsic mythology is this: those craft were not visitors from another solar system. They were the product of blueprints that had already been on Earth for 20 years. Blueprints that had arrived from Aldebaran via Orsic, now operational in the hands of whoever won the race to build them. The RFZ series allegedly flew from 1934. The war ended in 1945. Arnold's sighting is 1947. And Operation Paperclip, the documented American program that quietly absorbed over 1,600 German scientists after the war, sits precisely at this intersection of timeline and geography. Now, the question the conspiracy community never stops asking is whether there was a black Operation Paperclip, an unrecorded program, technologies that never appeared in any public file. The Roswell crash sits 4 weeks after the Arnold sighting in the New Mexico desert near major defense installations. Draw your own conclusions from that. Hans Kammler. I need to stay on Hans Kammler just for a moment. This was one of the most senior engineers in the entire SS. He oversaw multiple top-secret weapons programs. He had access to everything, and at the end of the war, he just stops being in the record. Different accounts give him different deaths in different places under different circumstances. In a world where former Nazi officials were tracked down hiding in South America 40 years later, the total evaporation of Hans Kammler from verifiable history is something that genuinely deserves more scrutiny than it receives. Just noting. Operation Highjump and Base 211. January 1939. A German vessel called the MS Schwabenland reaches Antarctica. Over the following weeks, German seaplanes fly reconnaissance missions across an unmapped stretch of territory, dropping territorial markers with engraved swastika poles as they go. They survey approximately 600,000 square kilometers. They name the territory New Schwabenland, New Swabia, a formal claim in the name of the Reich. Official purpose? Secure German whaling territory. The geology of the surveyed region tells a more interesting story. New Schwabenland covers parts of Queen Maud Land, where the geothermal volcanic activity creates ice-free zones. Lake Untersee is an oasis of liquid water year-round, with surprisingly complex biology. Scientists have confirmed that a subsurface habitation zone is not physically impossible in this region. Now, that is not conspiracy, that is verified geology. The conspiracy builds on this foundation. Throughout 1943 to 1945, German U-boats allegedly made regular supply runs to Antarctica, delivering construction materials and personnel to an underground facility carved into ice and rock, designated Base 211. Several U-boats remain genuinely unaccounted for at the war's end. Their last known positions do not match their surrender locations. The submarine U-977 surrendered to Argentina 66 days after Germany's capitulation. Its captain, Heinz Schäfer, was interrogated at length by US and British intelligence. The delay was never fully explained. Then, November 1946, the United States Navy deploys to Antarctica. Operation Highjump. 4,700 men, 13 ships, 33 aircraft, 1 aircraft carrier, 1 submarine. Commander Admiral Richard Byrd. It ends significantly ahead of schedule. Official reason? Weather. Following the expedition, a statement attributed to Byrd appeared in the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio that the United States was now facing a new enemy that can fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Now, the Soviet Union did not have pole-to-pole aircraft in 1947. Nobody did, officially. The internal logic of the Orsic mythology reads this deployment as confirmation. The Vril group escaped south. The Americans came to find out what was there. They came home without answering that question. And we've not gone back in force since. Describing Operation Highjump with its aircraft carrier and its submarine as a scientific research trip to count penguins is something I can't do with a straight face. You don't need a carrier group for fieldwork, you don't need a submarine to study ice cores. Something motivated that deployment. And maybe it was Cold War geopolitical positioning against the Soviets. Maybe it was something else entirely. But the cover story has never been very convincing. And if Byrd's quote is accurately reported, it is one of the most remarkable sentences spoken by any military commander in the entire post-war period. Nobody stays here. Berlin, March 1945. The same burning city we started in. Himmler's SS is in chaos. The Reich senior officers are negotiating surrender terms or arranging escape routes or both. The 1,000-year empire is running out of weeks. And Maria Orsic sends one final message to every known member of the Vril Society. 3 words. Niemand bleibt hier. Nobody stays here. No signature, no destination, no explanation. Just those 3 words, then nothing. She and every known member of the Vril Damen vanish completely. No graves, no prisoner records, no post-war sightings can be verified. No refugee documentation, no Allied intelligence file mentioning any of them by name. For people this embedded in the Reich's occult infrastructure, that level of total absence should be nearly impossible. People with SS connections left traces, always. She left none. 3 theories have followed her into the silence. The first is the most conventional. The ratlines, Vatican-assisted escape routes that moved thousands of Nazi officials to South America between 1945 and 1946. Eichmann used them, Mengele used them. Some researchers claim the Vril members were spotted in Argentina in the late 1940s. If true, they were hiding like everyone else. Well, that energy does not match the calm certainty of that final message. The second theory points south, Antarctica, Base 211, the New Schwabenland facility. The group had connections to whoever built it. They escaped via the same U-boat routes. They have been there ever since, continuing their work, maintaining contact with Aldebaran. Every unexplained aerial anomaly over the southern ice becomes evidence. Operation Highjump becomes confirmation. The third theory is the one that keeps people awake. What if the machine worked? What if nobody stays here does not mean nobody stays in Germany? Orsic never wanted a weapon. She never cared about the Reich or the war or what Himmler intended to do with the technology. From the beginning, that first transmission in 1919, there was only ever one destination. Those beings who'd been calling to her across 65 light years of space. In March 1945, with the Reich collapsing and the SS about to weaponize everything she had built, she made the only choice that preserved the mission's original purpose. She left. And here is the question that haunts this whole story. Whether Maria Orsic was real or constructed, whether the transmissions were genuine or fabricated, whether the machine flew or never existed. Someone built this myth with extraordinary care. Real historians argue about it. Real researchers spend real careers on it. The internal logic holds across 80 years of scrutiny. Real conspiracies do not usually look like this. They are messy and accidental and full of contradictions. The truth tends to look like noise. This looks like a message. So ask yourself the question that all roads in this story eventually lead to. If someone built this myth, what were they hiding by building it? I've been thinking about that final letter. 3 words, niemand blit hier. No explanation, no farewell. Complete calm in the middle of the collapse of the world. You know what that reads like to me? It reads like someone who already knew exactly what was on the other side of the door. It doesn't read like escape, it reads like arrival. I'm aware that what I've just said is either radical or completely unhinged, and I genuinely can't say which. But I will say this. If I had a functional anti-gravity spacecraft, March 1945 in Berlin is absolutely where I would use it. No question. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And I've just started a second channel, Chronicles of the Drift, so please stop by and check it out. Link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I've got Patreon and YouTube memberships. Again, links in the description below. Also, don't forget to check out the Mysteria Archive podcast, available on the YouTube Music app, which is free for podcasts. And as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. All right, my friends, be safe. And until next time, stay curious.